Harry Reid, as the majority leader and manager of the bill, got what is called a manager's amendment passed or put in the bill in the early wee hours of the morning that would effectively remove any of the tax on Cadillac insurance plans if you are a member of the Longshoremen's Union. If you want to know the language, it exempts, quote, individuals whose primary work is longshore work, close quote. They actually put that language in the bill to carve out a special interest, according to the Wall Street Journal this morning. Now, these are the same people, including the president, that have the audacity to say that they fought special interests to get this bill passed.
I won't stand by while the special interests use the same old tactics to keep things exactly the way they are.
No, this bill was all about special interests. This bill was all about carving out goodies to buy off votes. This bill was giving a handout to favored groups. The insurance industry was on board. The CEO of Aetna Insurance says, I don't care if they force us to raise premiums as long as we can still raise premiums. And they can. So everybody's premiums are going to go up to comply with the new federally dictated Insurance for America. Big Pharma, well, they cut a deal months ago to get more government money to pay for Medicare drugs, and so they were on board. The nonprofit hospitals, at the expense of for-profit hospitals, are on board. The insurance companies or mutual insurance companies are on board as well at the expense of for-profit insurance companies. The trial lawyers, the government labor unions, they were all on board this bill. This was the ultimate victory of the special interests. And yet, the liberals in Washington are running around trying to tell people that they fought the special interests. You want to talk about sausage being made, you know the old metaphor. The law and sausage are similar. You don't want to watch either one of them being made. It's a pretty ugly experience. Well, this sort of deal making has really brought Washington down, if it's possible, even further in the eyes of most Americans. And we'll see what happens when these guys go home for Christmas and when this bill goes to conference next year and they have to explain. By the way, it's only going to get worse. The House bill is even more intrusive. So this has to be reconciled with the Senate bill, and they're not going to lessen the power of Washington dictates. The House bill increases it. So the only way this bill can go is to get even worse as they meld it together with the House bill. Unbelievable stuff. Not much of a Christmas present.
Dennis Kucinich, who is a real socialist, I don't agree with socialism, but if you're going to be a socialist, really be one, has said he's against this bill because, quote, it is a huge boondoggle, a bailout for the insurance companies. And now Howard Dean being honest about this and says he may even get somebody to run against Obama in 3 years. And here's the headline from the Washington Post. Healthcare bill wouldn't bring real reform. And he goes on to state that, again, he's a socialist. He wants to take money from one group of people and give it to another. That's robbery, and that makes people dependent. And anytime you have big government, corruption always comes in. And anytime you have socialism, it never ends up getting to the people. Case in point, real socialists are going, actually, we're not for this bill now. Because the bill is a ripoff. $41 billion cuts in Medicaid. Depending on which version of the bill we look at, 30 to 60, there's different versions, 31, 62 billion cut out of other healthcare areas. They raise your taxes, take more money out of your check, put you in jail if you don't get insurance. They're raising taxes, but are going to cut your healthcare. This is a ripoff. Look, you have a banker bailout 14 months ago in last October 3rd. $700 billion revolving door of credit. They've gone to that window to the tune of $23.7 trillion. And those numbers are 4 months old. They haven't released the numbers in 4 months. $23.7 trillion pumped out there to the private banks. That's more than double the GDP of the country in less than a year. And October 3rd, they said, we have to have this bailout or the banks will fail, we'll have a depression. And Paulson told Congress we'll have martial law. That's on record. Okay? Then October 4th, on Saturday, they say we're not going to spend it on mortgages to unfreeze that market, and we're not going to say where the money went. So, see, they tell you the banker bailout is to help you. Day one, it's a bait and switch. They tell you it's environmental rules. Even if you believe that our carbon dioxide's bad, it's a scam, a global tax, nothing to do with carbon dioxide. And it's the same thing with the insurance. It's written by the insurance companies. Our government and most of the major governments of the planet are controlled by offshore central banks who control the issuance of currency and credit. They have unlimited fiat currency that they can produce in the form of loans. And so, of course, they've taken over the planet, and they control our government. And whether you have Democrats in or Republicans in, it doesn't matter. Any major legislation that passes is going to be a scam. It doesn't matter if it's at the UN global government level with the Copenhagen greenhouse gas tax system. It doesn't matter if it's the banker bailout. It doesn't matter if it's government-run health care. It doesn't matter what issue it is. It's going to be a ripoff. Even if you are a socialist or a communist and you want, quote, free health care, i.e. steal somebody else's money for yourself, even if you believe that's moral and good, you have to be against the health care bill because it's nothing but a cutting of services and the quality of services. Again, Obama, in this bill, raises a host of new taxes, something he promised not to do. He only said he'd raise taxes on people making over $125,000 a year. Before you email me and say it was $250,000, that was in households, a man and woman. It's individuals over $125,000. So before you get suckered into this, you should read the legislation and understand Dennis Kucinich, Howard Dean, they're all against this legislation. And why? They've now had a chance to read the bill. They raise your taxes, but then give you less services. Working class people, middle class, everybody will now have 2.5 to 5% of their paycheck taken out on top of Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, on top of the regular withholding. Your employers have to match that. And then you have to separately go buy your own insurance. And if you don't, it's huge fines and then 5 years in prison and then $250,000 fines. A total scam. And the federal government comes in with the HMOs and insurance companies and gives them liability protection, just like they gave 30-something years ago liability protection for drug makers who make dangerous vaccines. You know, you can't sue vaccine makers when you get brain damaged or sterilized or get cancer from a vaccine. There's a federal vaccine damage fund set up in the 1970s, and they quietly pay you off. You can't go through the regular courts. Well, that's the new system here, where the government decides what tests you can get, where the government decides what surgeries you can get. And see, the insurance companies have already done this with what they call capitation. And they do it in dentistry, they do it in MD work, in hospital work, across the medical field. They have hospitals and dental offices that are just capitation. And they put people in these big pools of HMOs where you get a lower standard of care. Because big deals are made with those medical institutions and the insurance companies to basically just take on a group of contracts and provide care, but at a lower standard. And so that's all that's happening here. We had the best health care in the world, some of the most inexpensive health care in the world just 40 years ago. But government dumped trillions of dollars in, partially subsidizing through socialism. And the more money they dumped in to the system, the more waste, the more corruption. And the insurance companies and banks and big medical firms lobbied for this. So all you so-called Democrats and liberals, you got suckered again.